What's up, everybody? Welcome to Mongols. Don't mind me. I am just updating the board behind me, which now says days since last playoff loss is now 364. So that's good. We got a massive win last night against Hartford. I am Mike Sparks. Joining me is Steve Mattiace and Justin Ashcraft. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. Obviously, massive, exciting feelings, emotions, so much going on after this one. Justin, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. We had a really good weekend. We took the the vegetable beds down today and stripped them and, got them ready for the sad date of winter. But no, it feels good to be accomplished. Feels good to a little bit of a chilly day in Central PA, but it was good to get out there and get that done. So good weekend overall.
Yeah. Steve, have you taken your beds down yet, or are they still kicking?
No, I got to go clean them out. I'll do it at some point, or it might be spring. Who
or
cares?
Not? Yeah,
I don't know. It's like the cold weather is really getting me this year, and I don't know why. This past few days made it way worse. I was visiting friends up in Syracuse, and it was colder. It was raining the whole time and windy. So it was like I just still feel like I have a chill in my bones. But got to listen to the game on my drive back. One thing I'll say, listening to a televised broadcast is very different than listening to a radio broadcast for something. I think because I'm just okay, why are they silent? Right? What's happening? I don't know what's happening. Say something, please say something. And granted, this game, there was plenty that we can talk about, or maybe not, but yeah, it was fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into the game, gentlemen. Josh is not here, so we will do the victory snap. Nothing exciting. What do I have here? Pure aqua blood. It's literally the only carbonated thing in my house. I'm not kidding. It's the one can. So, victory beverage. Cheers, gentlemen. Let's do a hey sir, and then just dive into it.
And now, hey sir, 1 minute reactions with Laura Ellen.
We won. Oh my word, we won. I was so excited. After we won, I almost forgot to record a video, but I would prefer, my heart would prefer if we didn't go to penalty kicks ever again. But, we had so many attempts and chances throughout the game, throughout regular time, throughout extra time, throughout the insane amount of stoppage time. It was an intense match. You could tell that Hartford just had a chip on their shoulder, and oh my goodness. And then we won. We won a playoff game. Okay. Wow. Let's go Hound!
This has been Hey Sir, 1 minute reactions with Laura Ellen.
I think the crazy thing was not just that we won a playoff game, and I want to talk about this game, but by the time we won this game, we knew that Louisville had lost to Detroit. So this was not our only home playoff game this season, which is insane to think about. Yep. Justin, I know you kind of had an eye on both games. Sort of just walk me through how you were feeling down the stretch there.
Yeah, it's one of those things that as you're watching these scores roll in and you're watching kind of what's happening, you're seeing they did a good job on the broadcast, kind of flipping back and forth of, showing a little bit of what was happening in Louisville, all that kind of stuff. And you're just like, all right, but we got to win this game.
We got to win. Yeah.
we got to finish. We got to do our end of the deal before we get to experience the benefits of that end of the deal. Thank you, Detroit. The only time I'll ever say that, but thank you, Detroit, for helping us out with that one. But we've got to finish our end of the deal first. And it did feel like we were going to. It was a lot of scary moments as the announcers were kind of they make these kind of offhanded comments for them of it's good enough until you give up a last minute goal, and then I'm like, stop saying that. Just let the game ride, but I think I felt pretty confident for most of the game, but it was fun watching that Louisville score continue to roll in.
Yeah, it was funny. We were talking a little bit off air in that there was a lot of action. The Hounds had chances, but if you just go back and watch the highlights, literally it shows you some action from the first half. Then it shows you the whistle to end the first half. Then they immediately show you the whistle to end the second half, the whistle to end the first intermission, the whistle to end the second intermission, and then it goes straight into PKs. So if you did not actually watch this game, you'd be like, what actually happened here? This was another case where, Justin, you were saying, and Steve, I'll get your thoughts here in a second. I know you were on the road, but Justin, you made a point of saying that the announcers were alluding to the fact that with Rob Vincent in charge, it seemed like there was a little bit more freedom. You could see some different tactics. This is something we've talked about the past few weeks. What specifically did you see in this one?
Yeah, I mean, they were doing a lot more than alluding to it. I will say that. I mean, they kind of said it was some stuff straight from their midweek interview with Rob, and all of that. But they were talking about how, a lot of times in Bob's tactical system, if you have an outside back, Etu or Biazzi or Barnes, whoever's on the field at the time, if you have one of them going forward, the instruction to the other one is going to be, hey, you got to stick back. You got to stay back. You got to stay at home to protect that other side of the field. And what would generally happen with somebody like Charles All would shift out to the wing to try to kind of take that side of the field. And it would pull, what they were saying was that would pull All kind of out of the middle of the field where he's kind of the most effective. And what they're saying has changed is Rob is kind of like, nope, if one of you goes, the other one should go too, because that means you have players on both sides of the field. What that does is that keeps All in the middle of the field, which, as we talked about for a long time at the beginning of the season, if you give Augie some help in the middle of the field, he's going to look a lot more effective. And so if you can leave All kind of distracting the defenders and being a pest and all that kind of stuff, then Augie is going to get some more space and all of that. I don't know that I saw it at its most effective last night, but I definitely saw that permission that, Biazzi went on one side of the field, Etu was up on the other side of the wing. And there was times where, you see those overhit crosses and the other wing back is up there grabbing the ball, on the other side of the field. And so I think it's interesting, at least, to think like, oh, there's some tweaks, and that's the word they specifically used last night was, and I think that's what they quoted Rob as saying is like, hey, we didn't overhaul anything. We're just making tweaks for this system.
Steve, do you think this team a few weeks ago was kind of left for dead? We kind of were debating, are they even going to make the playoffs, let alone get a home playoff game? Now we're in a situation where Bob gets benched. I'm not. I know that there
That's
are
a phrase.
I know there are many out there, and I might feel this way, but I don't want to say it. But obviously, the shift to have Rob in, there has been a change in play. There has been a tweak. Do you feel that tweak is enough to? I mean, we saw Louisville go down. We're going to talk about the Battery went down today. Is that tweak enough to make us actual contenders here?
I don't know. What I think the question, driving for 5.5+ hours last night, listening to the game, hearing them have that conversation, I started to think that, the reality is this is still Bob's team. And Rob's job, I think, is a lot harder because these guys have been playing this system for the entire season. Some of these guys for 2 seasons, 5 seasons, right? And so to change the system, I don't think is something you can do at this point in the season when you're trying to scrape together entry into the playoffs and now a playoff run. But making some of those tweaks, I think, is important. And so I look at this and I think that, there's still some things about this game from what I listened to, going back, watching portions of the game, that you still see Bob's influence. And that's the reality of it, right? You're not going to not see that. And so it makes me excited for what some of these players can do when they're given a lot more freedom overall. I just think that Rob is doing really well with something that has been thrust upon him, trying to make some changes. And the reality is Rob was an offensive player, right? He what was it, 22, 21 goals he scored his final season with the Hounds. He is a guy that I think is going to think more offensively just because of his playing experience. And I like that, right? And so, yeah, I watched for some of that as I was scrolling through the game. You saw some times where both wingbacks were moving up. You saw some times where they weren't. And that's because they haven't been all season, right? So they're kind of stuck in some of these habits. They're trying to make some of those changes on the fly. The other thing that I noticed, though, is when All was dominating that spot behind Augie, it gave the other three midfielders a lot more flexibility to move around and interchange, right? And so you've got Robbie switching sides of the field. You've got Danny dropping back or stepping forward. You've got Sample kind of dropping back into that defensive midfield role at times. And I think that's why the Hounds were so effective at stifling pretty much anything out of the first few minutes from Hartford's midfield and offense. That our midfield looked, I thought, fantastic from what I saw. And I think a part of that is that those guys were given a lot of freedom to do what they wanted to do and not having to cover on those wide spots as much.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about how it seems like, not that there wasn't stuff happening in the game. I think we want to talk about the penalty shootout. That's where all the action was at the end. Before we dive into that, is there any other takeaways that you specifically want to touch on, Justin, from the other 120 minutes that were played?
Yeah. I mean, I think a couple things. I want to talk about two chances, but I'll start off with this. I think the nice thing that happened in this game is you got that wake up shot, a minute and a half, 90 seconds into the game. Hartford puts a ball in the back of the net. It gets called offsides. It was kind of like the Hounds woke up at that point. It was like, oh, wait, we're here. Game on. We got to play. And so I'm not sure if that had happened or that's just like, if that doesn't go in the back of the net and get called offsides, I'm not sure the Hounds wake up in this game, or they're all of a sudden down 1-0 and it becomes a very different sort of game. But I think there was two chances that I really liked. One was there was either a corner or a free kick, I can't remember which, that kind of got passed across the side of the net. So he had got a hand on it and dove to the corner of the goal, and Danny was right there. One little 6 inches of difference, he gets his foot on that, and that's a goal there. And then there was a chance later in the game that Robbie kind of got a ball that popped up in the middle of the net, and he's just kind of stretching for it and doesn't, and so it was another kind of 6-inch game that it just shows how close these games can be, that, either of those, had the ball been 6 inches different of where it was, Robbie gets his foot on it, scores a goal late in regular time, and we're up 1-0. Or, Danny gets a foot on that ball and we're up 1-0 in the first half. Both of those chances I thought were really good. So it just showed, I think, the Hounds had control for most of this game. It was like the first 90 seconds, Hartford looked like they were going to come in and kind of scare us. But after that, the Hounds kind of woke up and took control of the game.
Yeah. The other moment for me that I think was game-changing was the 8-minute yellow card for Luke Biasi, which necessitated his change. I think it was like 60 minutes later. So he didn't play the last 30 minutes of regulation or the 30 minutes of extra time. And I think that had a definitive impact on the Hounds. And that's not any shade on Perrin Barnes, but we got to look at what has happened this season, that Luke and Junior have locked down those starting spots. And Barnes is a good player, the type of player I want on this team, because he's pushing those guys. He's making their jobs harder. Those two guys locking in those spots, I think, speaks volumes to their talent. And taking a guy like Luke Biasi, who we've praised all season long, I think that's one of those things that you start to get some of those tired legs later in the game. If he's still on the field, some of his talent really could have provided some more of those opportunities, whether that's scoring a goal or putting some pressure or winning a free kick. So that was another big moment for me that I think kind of changed the game.
Yeah.
I think what was interesting about that, Steve, I think the announcer made some comment about Luke's having to be pulled off the field. He's on a yellow card. He can't, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, wait, Luke Biasi on a yellow card? You're not surprised that Luke Biasi's on a yellow card? That's his bread and butter. A yellow card a game.
Yep. Professional foul.
That's when That's when he wakes up and starts playing. He's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, there's the yellow. All right, game time.
All right, I'm good.
Let's go."
I'm in.
Let's
Yeah.
talk. Let's talk about the shootout, guys. There's part of me that obviously the Hounds don't have the best history with shootouts in the playoffs. So anytime it goes to a shootout, there's some nerves, but especially, I think, were we all there at Highmark for the last time that we lost in that shootout matchup? And it was just, you watch the ball just go wide. And so it's nerves, but Hartford sent in Haji Berry, Golden Boot winner from a few years ago, to take on Eric Dick. He tries to put it right up the middle. Dick dives to his left and just leaves his legs dangling, and Dick gets the save. And at that point, you're like, game on. Like, okay, great. Like now we're in this. So that's purely a case where, you can have all the offensive power in the world, but I feel like Dick just completely turned the tide on that first shot. Like that was it. It was kind of over in my mind at that point. Steve, did you feel the same way?
So I want to go like before that, right? Like I'm just getting off the highway, basically, right? Like I'm up near Cranberry. I'm like, I've got a pit in my stomach because I'm like, this is going to penalty kicks and this is not comfortable, right? And so he makes that save and it's like, oh my gosh, right? Like, I mean, I was just like, Eric, right? I mean, screaming at the top of my lungs. Like I said, Rory was scared out of his mind because he had no idea what's going on. And then when I watch back at it, I recognize, right? Like I'm watching this knowing the outcome. But watching the full shootout, I think what is so amazing about it is it's like, even before that, Eric looks relaxed, right? Like he does not look stressed. And then every single one of our 4 players that came up, none of them, I mean, they looked intent, they looked focused, but none of them looked stressed out. And their reactions afterwards were just pure like adrenaline and pumped up. And so I think that, sure, maybe it's looking back at it, knowing what's going to happen. But just kind of seeing that to me, the way that they conducted themselves felt so different than previous shootouts that I've seen the Hounds in. So, yeah.
My middle son, he was getting a shower during the shootout and he came out and saw Dick save the goal and he just ran through the house yelling, "I love Dick!" And my wife said, "Ben, we love you for who you are." So, Dick makes the save. Our order of shooters was then what? Jacqueson, Mertz, Augie, and then Suber. Was anybody else surprised that Suber was number 4? Justin, you're shaking your head now.
No, I think Suber is one of those guys that mentality-wise, you want him at the penalty spot. Sometimes defenders, I think it's interesting because I think sometimes defenders are the best PK takers because they just have to be so focused and whatever during the game. You have to be able to defend the ball, you have to be able to watch the ball, you have to be able to not hit the player, all that stuff. There's so much more often that goes into playing defense than offense. And so I think I'm not surprised that Suber was up there. And I would echo what Steve said. I loved who you could pick the order out of it. But I said to Laura Ellen as the shootout starting, I said, we have the better team on the field right now. I mean, you think about what Hartford had to do in the game. They had to take Kyle Edwards off the field. Michi Galina came out with an injury. And so they're down, and they have probably not all that healthy Haji Berry, on the field. Only played 5 minutes of the game. And, now he's taking a PK. And so I felt really good about that. But I also just loved the way our players took, so he is trying to play some mind games, not getting back on his line, standing on one side of the goal and then hopping out to the middle right at the last second. He's playing all these mind games, but it just didn't seem to affect the guys. I feel like every guy came out, kissed the ball, put it down, took their steps back, and then just pretty easily slotted all 4 of them home. So, it's Dick, Dick almost had another one. Yeah. The other hit the crossbar. He definitely seemed to be in their heads a little bit more. Or they seem to be in their heads a little bit more than what the Hounds players did.
Kevin in the chat asked, do you suppose the Hounds had a scouting report on how bad their keeper would be at PKs? I can tell you, I've had this conversation with Bushy. The answer is yes. Like, not how bad, but they absolutely watch tape and understand what they expect the keepers to do. Bushy does it for just his own keepers to like learn from it, but then they pass that information on to the attackers for sure. So I think, Justin, to your point, some of the tactics of, starting on one side, I think the guys just like knew it was going to happen. They're like, go ahead and do it. We know where we're going. And they just put it away.
Yeah. I mean, and Vincent talked about this. And I think a couple of the players did too. I think Sean did in the post-game interviews, that they prepared for this. And the broadcasters were talking about it too, that they had talked to Rob, and he had the people that he thought were going to take it, but still asked the guys on the field, do you want to do this or not? So there's that aspect of it, that they did their due diligence, they practiced, he had trust in the guys. I think for me, really the bigger surprise was players that weren't in those first five. Because kicker number 5 would have been Beto Yidrak. And so when you're not having players like Danny Griffin or Junior Etu in those positions, that definitely is the type of thing where it's like, you've got some guys that are more attacking flair players that are not in those first 5. You're putting 2 center backs in there. Now, I think Beto's got a supreme amount of talent as well, and would have had every chance of success. So it's just kind of so different in that sense, because I could make the case for a couple other guys also being in those first 5. And looking back, right, like it still was nervy even after the save. It's like, okay, we can't miss one. But I mean, yeah, like they just were in control of themselves and of those shots. And so fun to watch. And then just like Sean's celebration at the end, like the initial hype, and then just like super calm until everybody gets around him, and then everybody's like celebrating. It was really fun to watch.
Listen, all the reports from the stadium were that the players were reiterating how much fun they're having and how different this feels from maybe last season, in terms of how it was just kind of like, okay, let's get through the end of this. Steve, you mentioned Eric Dick got to the press conference, and the first thing he said to the media was like, did you guys have a good time? Like, it's there just seems to be a different vibe this season, which it does make me wonder. We've talked for years about how you can have the best team in the regular season. Louisville had one of the best seasons ever in USL history this year. They still lost. You need something special this time of year to actually make a playoff run. And it's not always the best team that's on the field. And it makes me wonder, are the Hounds discovering that thing? And it's almost like a new season now. And it's, we'll see. It's one game. We can't get ahead of ourselves, but it's definitely, it's something a little bit different that we haven't seen in a while.
Yeah. The other thing, granted, we're talking about the playoffs, right? You make different decisions during the playoffs than you make during the regular season. Not Augie's best game, but Rob stuck with him for all 120 minutes. He gave him the chance to be there for the shootout. And he was calm, cool, collected, and just slotted that home with absolute poise. He brought on Jacqueline, who has an injury-plagued season, hasn't contributed much offensively. We've seen some of his chances. But again, an absolutely stellar class penalty kick from those 2 guys who we went into the season expecting to be doing a lot offensively, and they were there at the end of it last night.
Yeah. One thing that's really interesting, and I'm interested to talk to Rob about it hopefully this offseason, is he's basically come in, and to your point, Steve, it is a very hard task, but he is essentially just coaching one game at a time. It's here's the pieces, just get through the next game. That's it. And that's what he's had to do. So he hasn't had to think necessarily long-term about the whole season. He hasn't had to balance, necessarily injury stuff. It's just kind of like, what's next? And the rest of the way out here, it's going to be one game at a time and just kind of see what you could do. And so that is a very different way to approach things than if you are looking like we got this 10-game block and like you're going to get some losses. Where could those come from? How do you structure? It's just you just got to keep winning.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, and they talked about it too last night on the broadcast. That even he said in his midweek interview, he's talking about the difference between an assistant coach and a head coach. Is the assistant coach, you're kind of just doing whatever the head coach tells you, and you're kind of running whatever drills he wants you to run during practice, all that kind of stuff. But as the head coach, now you got to come into practice on Monday morning with a thought for the guys. Hey, here's what we're working on today. Here's what we're, here's what we're running after today. Here's what we're running after this week. Here's, and that's just it's a different thing than being the assistant coach and be like, all right, Bob, what are we doing today? Yeah. He's got to come in and be like, all right, guys, we are working on this today because this is how this impacts the game this weekend and on all of that. So you're right. He has the pieces and he doesn't have this opportunity to make some changes and get some new guys in and all that. He doesn't have that opportunity. But what he does have is he can enter some new thoughts and he can enter some new ideas and all that kind of stuff. So I think he's doing well for sure.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. Let's see what Mondo had to think about this one.
It's time for Mondo's moment, the top moment of the game from the Mondalorian.
This week's Mondo moment from the Riverhounds' home playoff match against Hartford Athletic comes in PKs, because not only did Eric Dick save a PK, not only did all 4 Riverhounds players who stepped up to take their PK convert it, including, but not limited to, the Robbie Mertz, one of Pittsburgh's own, but also the stadium's vibes were so immaculate. I'm sure Highmark Stadium was heard even in Hartford, Connecticut. This is the way. Also, I'm sorry, Hartford, not only did you lose in the playoffs, but you also don't have Dunder Mifflin Paper Company. That's rough, buddy.
This has been Mondo's moment. Go Hounds.
I don't think I've ever seen Mondo more expressive, which is hard to do with a helmet on, but he said that to me at 1:30 a.m. And I was like, oh, you're still riding this thing. All right, cool.
He probably got home at 1:15.
Yeah.
That was different than his normal Mondo moment, and I love it.
Yes.
That was more of that, please. That was great.
Agreed. Guys, I know that we already kind of have our man of the match for the year, which is Robbie Mertz. Do we want to keep it going for the playoffs and just sort of see who our man of the match is for the playoffs? I want to say on the broadcast, did they give it to Dick? I've seen 3 different. Somebody gave it to Suber.
Mertz.
Somebody gave it to Mertz, and I saw Suber come up too. Justin, what do you think about those 3?
Oh, hey, I'm good with those 3. Nothing to add.
Nothing to add. Okay. Steve, do you want to pick an order to that?
Oh man, it is such a hard order. These are the 3 players I've been thinking about all day, and what is my argument for any one of them over the other? But for me, it actually really comes down to Mertz and Suber, and I gotta give the edge to Suber because he, as good as Mertz was, driving everything in the midfield, providing some opportunities and whatnot, Suber kept that back line really organized. He was a presence in the opposition box, and just the poise and leadership. I'm getting to the point where we can have this conversation in a few weeks, in a month or whatever, but Sean Suber, I think, is not the best, but the most important center back the Hounds have ever had.
Steve, what position did you play when you played?
I played as a sweeper and then as a left winger.
Okay. Yeah. Since we've been doing this, I've noticed that you tend to gravitate towards that back line where it's always Suber and Biasi and
sure,
Ebert, and that's fine.
But I set the record for my small little podunk school in terms of number of goals scored in a season.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
I'm just putting it out there. Okay, guys. Anything else about this game before we look at the playoff table and talk about what comes next here?
I just have to make this statement. Alal Osamanu played 45 minutes last night, and we still kept a clean sheet.
What do you attribute that to, Justin?
Sean Suber, but I'm not gonna. It is what it is, but anyway, I mean, I don't think he had the best game. I don't think he was the highlight of the game or whatever else. But I think, to lose Vactor 12 minutes left in the game, in a game that you're going in extra time in a playoff do or die moment, and for Osamanu to come on the field after having the season that he has had, with injuries and kind of getting played off the field in a way, with Vactor being brought in, early on in the season and kind of, losing his spot on the field, in some way, shape or form, for him to kind of jump on the field and do what he did. I would hope that Vactor's back next week. If he's not, it makes me a lot more confident to see what Osamanu can do over 90 minutes.
Yeah. Let's talk about next week.
I had one other thing that I think was just too bad.
Yeah.
58th minute, yellow cards to Siahi and Mertz. Mertz went down. Still don't understand what Robbie's card was. But after the whistle blew, he gets up, he's trying to argue his case, and he picks up the ball. And Siahi comes rushing in, tries to grab the ball from Robbie, basically throws him to the ground because he's literally a foot taller than Robbie, it seems like, right? It gets diffused. They both get a yellow card. And you could see Robbie was fired up. But the composure from him to then at the end of it, walk over to Siahi, pat him on the stomach and be like, hey, we're good. So I just want to say like that really impressed me from Robbie, that we know Robbie can get fired up and let that get to him. The maturity and composure in that moment to, I was fired up, but hey, we're good. We both kind of got a little fired up. Let's move on. And it not become a bigger thing for the rest of the game was pretty awesome to see.
There are times with him in particular where I would love to just be like a fly on the inside of his head, because I've had this conversation with him where I'm like, oh, dude, you were like, I was worried about you out there. And he's like, no, I had it. I think he plays these games in a way that he knows that he's getting a little bit, but he's always kind of there. Mm-hmm. But in your head, you're like, are you there? Or did you cross that line? Where are you? And so, he has definitely come a long way in the past few years. So,
That was one of the weirdest calls I've ever seen in my life, though, as far as a referee decision. And I don't know, if Robbie got the yellow for kind of, as Sahi is trying to take the ball and all that kind of stuff, he kind of jumped up and shoved him, and if he gets the yellow for that, then I kind of understand it. But the fact that the foul was even called on him as he's on the ground and 3 Hartford players are kicking at him, and he gets the foul called on him, even the announcers are like, what? How is that a foul on Robbie?
And then later they bring it back up and they're like, maybe he had a handball. He did not.
Yeah. Okay, whatever.
They were talking about it 20 minutes later, still trying to figure it out.
Welcome to the USL, guys. Let's look at how everything is shaken out now that the games have been played. I think the West, there might still be a game going on. The East is settled, even though this chart does not show that it is fully settled. So moving on, Detroit, as we mentioned, beat Louisville. So Detroit were the 8th seed, Louisville were the 1 seed. Detroit move on. We obviously beat Hartford. So because we were the 4 seed and Detroit was the 8 seed, that means Detroit is coming to us. We're going to talk about that in a second. The bottom half of our table, you have North Carolina. We're at 3. Loudoun, we're at 6. North Carolina beat Loudoun, so North Carolina move on. And the other massive team that nobody wanted to see was the Charleston Battery. They hosted Rhode Island. Rhode Island beat the Charleston Battery. So no, Rhode Island move on to play North Carolina. There is a potential path. Again, we want to take this one game at a time. There is a potential path where the Hounds could host all the way up until the finals if we continue to win and if Rhode Island somehow beats North Carolina, which again blows my mind. But guys, let's talk for a second here about Detroit. So Detroit comes to town on Saturday. The Hounds put out a press release last night. It said the game time was still TBD. FOTMOB lists the game at 4 p.m. I think it's at 4. I need to check Ticketmaster and see if they actually have times on it, but don't take our word for it. The game is going to be Saturday. We know that. When you actually kind of look at how we have stacked up against Detroit, we've talked about his not really a rival. I think some people think of it as a rival. I think Detroit fans want to be rivals with everybody, but just because of the proximity, because of some of the back and forth with the fans over the years, it feels slightly rival-ish. Detroit have gotten the better of us this season. They beat us 1-0 at home, and then we drew 0-0 on the road. So if you just kind of look at that, and if you look at, sort of Detroit since the beginning of October, not a lot of high-scoring games. They got a 2-0 win over North Carolina. They lost 1-0 to Loudoun. They got a 1-1 draw with the Battery, 1-1 draw with Tampa, and then they just beat Louisville 1-0. And that was after Louisville went 16 games unbeaten. The announcers actually called that the upset of all upsets, which, it's hard to disagree with that.
I mean, the reality is this Louisville team, they didn't have, I think, as many points as the Orlando team that previously had the record, but they had a better points per game because they played more games or less games. I mean, it's a massive upset. You're talking about a team that had one loss away to North Carolina in the middle of the season, undefeated at home, and to lose to an 8th seed. And Detroit knows how to do that.
I went back and watched some of that game. Detroit's goal did come off a corner kick, so it was a set piece. It was early. It was like 30-ish minute. After that, they literally dropped into a 5-4-1 and just bunkered. And Louisville still got some chances. And to Detroit's credit, they kept it clear. There were a few spots that were really close for Louisville, and Detroit kept them out. I think the big thing that we will all remember is in 2023, after we were kind of top dogs, they came into Highmark and beat us 1-0 in the first round of the playoffs. After that game, they went on to lose 4-0 to Louisville. So here's hoping that history repeats itself, that they lose to Louisville and then they're going to come lose 4-0 to us. Justin, how are you feeling about the next round being Detroit?
Are you guys ready for another 0-0 draw? I am. I think, it's not going to be a high scoring game. And these teams don't do that. We don't do that against Detroit. We never really have. And so I think it's going to be another very tense game. And kind of the way the announcers were talking about the game last night, hey, neither team really likes the ball, and somebody's got to have the ball. And so, last night it was like, all right, neither team likes the ball, but Pittsburgh has it. So that's the way the game's kind of going. And it feels like that's the way it's going to be again next week. It's hey, who's going to take the ball, and then who's going to do something with the ball. And if you can't catch a team on a counter, then you've got to create something. And so the challenge will be, can the Hounds go and create something?
Yeah. Steve, is this a game that do you give the edge to either team, or in your mind, is this a coin toss?
I think the Eastern Conference is a coin toss from here on out. Looking at the teams that are left, they are all, I think, teams that are able to grind out a result. But none of these teams are impressively excellent on the offensive side. Now, that doesn't mean that some of these teams haven't had success in that way, right? But we're talking about a lot of teams that either can't convert their chances or are really defensively stout. And so, I'm wondering, are we looking at penalty kicks for whoever is in the final the whole rest of the way, whether that's us, whether that's another team, right? That's the level that I could see these things looking at. I think, though, that Justin's absolutely right. You're not going to see a lot one way or the other that is drastically different, because both of these teams are not used to playing with the ball. And I have a little bit more hope with Rob Vincent at the helm, that, like we already discussed, right? He's working with the pieces he has, but he's trying to make some of these tweaks. I think last night's game, I think the Detroit game is a heck of a lot different if we're playing the system the way Bob Lilly played it, where we're actively ceding control instead of saying, well, they're ceding control, so we're going to take the ball. That we would not have kept Hartford limited to so many chances if we weren't controlling the ball in the middle of the field and pushing it forward into their third as frequently. And I think we have that same opportunity. And so now the task for the guys is get some of those overloads into the box, get some of those balls to those guys that are overloading into the box and see what can happen. I mean, we had some chances. We almost had an own goal from Hartford last night, right? Like it was that close. That those are the types of things that in games like this can make all of the difference. And if we can do that to Detroit, we can easily win this game in regulation. But it wouldn't surprise me if we see penalty kicks again.
It'll be really interesting to see of the remaining 4 teams in the East, how many teams score from open play here on out. I could see a lot. If there are goals, my money is on set pieces or corner kicks. Just like wherever you can create just a little bit of an overload, just a little bit of chaos. Because I think to both of your points, these teams are going to set up pretty well, and they're going to be really difficult to break down. And so you're going to have to take your chances wherever you can just create just a little bit of chaos. And that's where I also wonder, like I said, is this the right time to have sort of fresh eyes on the Hounds and be tweaking little things here and there just to create a little bit more overload than maybe you see from a team that's been doing the same thing all season?
So Mike, that's 3 games in the East before we get to the final. So we'll look at those 3 games. So if I give you the over under of goals from open play of 1.5, what are you picking?
Well, wait, are you talking about for the Hounds, or are you talking about
for these 4 remaining teams in the next 3 games?
Okay, so 4 remaining teams. You're saying the over-under is 1.5 goals
of open goals, not set pieces,
across both games or in each game?
Both of these games and the matchup from these winners.
Oh, dang. Okay, so we're talking 3 games, 1.5 goals. Am I taking the over-under? I would probably take the under. Legitimately. Like, I think there could be a goal from open play. I think everything else is going to be set.
So I'm like sitting there trying to like set the number, and I was like, I can't go lower than 1.5, can I?
No. Do you disagree?
No.
Yeah.
But like, how do I go lower than 1.5? 0.5?
Yeah.
There's a different mentality. Like, there's a difference of mentality in these games too. Like, I remember at some point in the second half, like, turned to Laura and I said, if this was a regular season game, this would be the type of game where announcers are saying this game needs a goal.
Yeah.
Like, it just needs a goal and it'll open up. Like, if somebody scores, the other team's going to have to attack, and then, and that's just what happens. But in a playoff game, you don't want to say that. And it is just a different thing of like, man, if, I thought several times last night, man, if Pittsburgh just scores, then Hartford's going to have to come out of their stupid bunker shape and try to actually score a goal.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm like, but if we give up the goal, then we're going to have to just press even more into their bunker shape, and it's going to be even rougher than what it already is. And so I think, like, it is one of those things, like, I would love to see the Hounds come out against Detroit and, like, for 5 minutes, just try to score. Like, just go all out, press, try to score, try to create something, and then back off and see what you can do. Because I think, like, it is one of those things that if you get a team where they can't bunker anymore, like, hey, you're down 1-0 in the playoffs, you can't sit back anymore. Then you have the opportunity for counters and other things, even if you have the majority of the possession.
Justin, I just asked Steve if he feels that this game is any more than a coin toss. Do you feel that one team has an edge one way or another? I mean, I kind of feel like Highmark is a bit of an edge, especially to your point. If you can come out in the first 5 minutes and you get the fans behind you and maybe you rattle them a little bit, I feel like that's a bit of an edge. But are you feeling confident in predicting a winner in this one?
No, I'm not feeling confident in predicting a winner. I do think, to your point, the crowd will be there already, and I think that's the thing that the Hounds got last night is they got the crowd. And not that the crowd wasn't good last night. I mean, Mondo said it, but I think there's as a longtime Hounds fan, there's a sense of dread that comes with first round playoff game that just overshadows the whole game. No matter how loud you're cheering, no matter what you're doing in the stands, it just kind of overshadows your aura. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think what will it's all bonus from here. As a Hounds fan, it is all bonus from here. It does not matter what happens this week. I will go into next game as positive as any game I've gone into this season, because we won one stinking playoff game, and so I think it is one of those things. The crowd's going to be there, and I think if anything, that does definitely give the Hounds an edge.
I was literally laughing out loud last night because you were messaging updates about the Louisville game to the group, and I can almost feel Kaz yelling, "Shut up, I don't care. Like, we have to get through this game, and then I will look at what happened with Louisville. Stop talking to me," because just
that's
everybody
exactly
was
the
on
feeling
edge.
that I got when I sent them. I was like, Kaz, chill.
Oh man. Okay.
I have been here for all the playoff losses to this point. I have watched all of these playoff games. I understand what's happening.
Oy. Well, guys, not that we're ending this pessimistically, but like I feel like we're all kind of just firmly sitting on the fence here, waiting to see what happens. I'm hoping for a win.
Mike, the reason it's not pessimistic is because we have the opportunity to have that opinion, right? Like Justin was saying, like this going into next week, I don't know what's going to happen because it's a playoff game against a team that knows how to play.
Yeah.
But do I feel stressed and fraught like I did thinking about last night's game? Not at all, right?
Yeah,
like, I feel much better.
Yeah.
It's all bonus. It's all bonus.
That's a good point. Well, who knows? Maybe the guys will be slightly more relaxed and like we'll see that translate into positive vibes on the field. Yeah. Well, anything else for this one, guys? Like I feel like we kind of covered all the bases. Nothing left to do now but to kind of sit back and wait and see how this thing plays out.
I mean, there was literally very little to talk about.
There was.
Right? Like there was a shootout, a couple of cards.
Yeah.
A playoff picture, and 120 minutes of what?
Yeah. So, well, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate the conversation as always. Thank you, everyone who has been watching and listening and giving us comments in real time. We do appreciate it. Obviously, best of luck to the guys as they prepare this week for yet another home playoff game. There's a chance that it's not the last one this season, which is kind of nuts. But we got nothing else. Nothing but vibes. Nothing but good vibes from here on out. So thank you, everybody. We appreciate the support as always. We will be back with more Hounds content for you very, very soon.
See ya.